America, God, and country. Why is this such a... We're just going to jump right into it. Why is this such a controversial thing? We've grown up here. We're all from the United States. Why is this such a controversial topic? Stupid people. I need to backtrack. 3 rules of engaging this topic. You violated the 3rd one. First one, we are not here to deify America. America is not God's latest version of the nation of Israel. Nowhere in the Bible is it relayed that in 2,000 years the Lord will raise up America. Second rule is we're not here to deify the founding fathers who put it all together in various writings and paperworks. Last one, we're here as Christians. We are a light. We are to be a light in the dark world. Therefore, the light points the way. And because the light has the property it does not have the ability to pick a stone up and cast it. And why do we say this? Because we're not perfect. I don't think anybody in here would claim with any degree of serious perfection. But America, why is it so controversial? You've heard the term, if not in person, at least on TV. You know, the rest of the world thinks of us as ugly, rude, arrogant. You've heard the term ugly Americans. I don't know how many have traveled abroad, maybe or maybe not have heard that, but why is this so controversial just for being American, or America just simply being?
Number one, I think people don't think of us as the United States as being under one God. They have their own God. Plurality. They just don't think of it as that this country is founded on God.
So you're saying that we've moved away from the principle of one God to many gods. We're going to get to that later. Any other ideas? Trenton? Moved away from... Okay. Now, we'll go ahead and say that the founding fathers, by no stretch of the imagination, we're in agreement on Christianity. Most of them were denominationalists. Restoration movement came 100 years after America was founded. But as far as what we're talking about here, you're correct that they all at least had a foundational belief in the God of the Bible to some degree, to be able to put together the documents they did and to sign them in a manner that they did. We as Americans have forgotten we've been blessed. What about who we are as a people?
There's the ultimate struggle right there, I think. And it's not just for Americans, it's for any country, any nation that goes through this, because there's a Christian and a non-Christian. And there's the battle line.
Mm-hmm.
And you've got Satan there stoking the fire, so to say.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Kyle? Okay. Okay. Nancy? Well, I didn't realize Kyle had a comment, so I'm going to ask Angela because I was going to ask a question. It's an easy question, I promise. Not putting you on the spot too badly. Are your children Americans? Because of... Okay? Because they're adopted. They're not second-class citizens. They don't have a different set of laws that they have to live by, a different set of governances that they have to live by. They don't have to worry about deportation or anything of that nature whatsoever. The United States is the only country in history where race and ethnicity, biology and genetics did not define you as a citizen of that country. You ask Doug Fox, he came over from Ohio. He's still called Buckeye. But he's still an American. We still have to take him. Gary Hornsby. Kentucky's trying. Basketball's not there yet, but they're trying. Race and ethnicity has what's defined every other nation throughout history. We are truly the great experiment. And they're just waiting for us to see what happens. They're waiting for us to see what happens. We're called the great experiment. We're called the melting pot. We're called all sorts of different things. But one thing we've been called that I think we don't put out there in front enough, and I think we've forgotten it to the point of having to battle over it now, is we are a nation that was at least founded on Christian principles. And there are so many that want to say that in the reverse. There are so many that want to disclaim that want to go against that want to say, well, we were founded on principles, sound principles by smart men. They were smart for a reason. It's because they were guided by their faith of varying degrees, but all in the same God as they best understood the Scriptures. The American... Get your pens ready. The American Trinity. If you take a coin out of your pocket, you will find the three things listed on your paper on those coins. Or so I'm told by the trusted source that Brian got this from. E pluribus unum. What does it mean? Out of many, one. What was that intended to first mean? Okay. Who assimilated together? Brought their different ideas, brought their different cultures, brought their different backgrounds. And out of the 13 colonies, which eventually became 50 states, one. And it's that binding together that makes us one. Whether we're first-generation Americans, whether we can trace our roots all the way back to whenever our ancestors came from overseas. Out of many, one. Liberty. What's controversial about liberty? Because all these are controversial. These are all things that make other nations and countries kind of sneer a little bit. What's wrong with liberty? What's the alternative? Slavery. Freedom is liberty. What if we said not liberty, but equality? Because there are other countries that say not liberty, but equality. Danny, are we the same as each other?
Yes.
As far as
Freedom.
liberty in the United States. Are we equal? So we have liberty and we're equal. How are the two different then? How are the two different? Why couldn't we just substitute? Let's just throw liberty out and put equality in. Equally enslaved. We could be equally yoked in something bad. Go ahead.
On God's eyes, He shows no partiality.
Okay.
Man tries to separate that.
Okay. So how does man separate that? Because that's what we're really kind of looking at as the American experiment.
By race.
Okay. By what do you mean by that?
Well, we've always heard upper class, middle class, lower class.
Okay.
Here in America. And people, whether they look up to the upper class or, a lot of people.
I don't think it's that at all. Sorry to disagree with you. But when our ancestors came here, we came here looking for liberty.
Uh-huh.
We might have had equality with our brothers or sisters wherever they lived. When we came to America, when my ancestors came to America, they was looking for liberty. They was looking for freedom. They was looking to become their own person. This was the land of liberty, and that's why they came. Maybe even the liberty of religion. That's Mayflower, all of those was religious individuals that moved away and left because they had the lack of liberty. They might have the equality of their fellow people, but they did not have the liberty of being able to freedom of religion, whatever. So.
Gary said so many things. He said it right. When we wake up at the beginning of the day, we all have a choice. We all have the same liberty in that we can decide what we're going to do with this day. That's what they say of a rich man and a homeless man. They both have the same 24 hours. What makes equality different is not just how you start the day, but that you're limited on how you'll end the day. And we see a lot of that being pushed to the forefront in our political society, even most recently is the recent elections. Guaranteed income, guaranteed this, that, or the other. I hesitate to call them handouts because they're paid for by somebody somewhere. But, you hear about basic standard of living. And I'm not against a basic standard of living. But should we take from someone else who's had the liberty to go and do extremely well, just take it from them and give it to one who's, for whatever reason, not done as well? Opportunity. Mm-hmm. Equal outcome. That's what we're talking about. Equality at the end of the day. It's not just where you start. Equality is also where you end up. And this is how we've gotten a lot of the socialist states that we see, particularly in Europe. And I think there are some in South America. In God we trust. That's controversial, just to say God, just to say that statement just about. We've tried to take it off the dollar, not me, but not us, but it's been tried to have been taken off the coinage and the paper money probably since it's been put on there. Why is this controversial? Why is trusting in God controversial? Okay. Well, you're both definitely right. There's definitely an accountability if there is a God. But also, if there's a God who's granted us rights, then those rights are only able to be adjusted or taken away by God. We have life not because the government has saw fit not to terminate our lives today. We have liberty because the government has determined that we have it. We have liberty because God has given it to us, not because the government has determined whether or not we should have it. And I think that's what a lot of the unspoken angst over what I'm even seeing here with the masks. Some have them, some don't. I don't have a preference. I'll wear one just to make someone else feel comfortable, personally. But you see people spitting hatred and attacking people. Some people have been killed because they won't wear a mask, or because they weren't even warned. Somebody just come up and just clobbered them. You see, if rights are given by man, they can be taken away by man. You see, with trusting in God also comes a higher level of accountability. We have an obligation to live in what way? Holy. What is it? The way God wants us to live. We have certain things we have to abide by. A lot of the terminology that's used today is morals and ethics. We have to live a certain way. Not just any God, however. See, that's a battle we're, for some reason, having to fight today. Is not just any God, the God of the Bible. Remember what was talked about. All laws are based upon this ethical notion, this moral notion. And God, we trust, declares the source of the ethical notion. It's objective. You see, if it was given by man to another man, it's subjective. I impose my right on you, or my authority on you, or you impose your authority on me. However, it was all agreed upon. I mean, if he really set to it, Keith could probably put us all into submission. At least one at a time. That's a different discussion. I'm not going to touch that discussion. We got some founding fathers, and this is where the miscommunication came in. I thought we had some slides, and we did have some slides, but there was some miscommunication somewhere, likely on my part. But Noah Webster, famous for the dictionary, I believe. There were a couple of Websters back then. I believe he's the one famous for the dictionary. In my view, the Christian religion is the most important and one of the first things in which children under a free government ought to be instructed. No truth is more evident in my mind than the Christian religion. It must be the basis of any government intended to secure the rights and privileges of a free people. To quote a famous movie, people just don't talk like that anymore. National Treasure. But we don't hear our leaders talking like this anymore. We hear our leaders trying to speak through the cracks and through the divisions, so I don't have to make any stands. So I don't have to offend this group over here. I don't have to offend this group over here. I need these voters over here, so I'm not going to offend them or touch on anything that might trigger them. George Washington, in his farewell address, he didn't need to politic for re-election. This was his farewell address. Matter of fact, he turned down permanent kingship. He said, that's the thing we were trying to defeat. You're trying to make me a king. Of all the dispositions and habits which lead to political prosperity, religion and morality are indispensable supports. In vain would that man claim the tribute of patriotism who should labor to subvert these great pillars of human happiness, these firmest props of the human duties of man and citizens. John Adams, statesman, my dear sir, may plan and speculate for liberty, but it is religion and morality alone which can establish principles upon which freedom can securely stand. Do we see this today? Do we see our leaders firmly entrenched in morality? Do we see them firmly entrenched in upright behavior? Not hardly. Not hardly at all. It's become so commonplace that we're not even appalled by it anymore. It's almost a daily or weekly discussion on one of the newspapers or one of the blogs or social media or whatever. Somebody's got something. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it's, I mean, I know it's hard for them to be that way because society doesn't want them to be that way. But
I think what's even sadder, and this just came to me just now, is they tried to use the church in order to smear one of the candidates. I mean, putting somebody next to a church is a black mark. It is a strike against him. You're calling Pence a godly man. I don't know if he is or not. I've never met him. He seems like a nice guy on TV, but here as of late, he's been painted as the chief defector to the president. I don't know. I don't know him. But I think it's important that before we judge anybody, we get all the facts we can, and even still, judgment is left for God alone. We just make the best determination we can for the situation we're in. Benjamin Rush, the only foundation for a republic is to be laid in religion. Doesn't say mix it in there. Doesn't say kind of get it in there if you can. The foundation for a republic is to be laid in religion. Without this, there can be no virtue, and without virtue, there can be no liberty. And liberty is the object and life of all republic governments. See, we talked about liberty a minute ago. We talked about wanting the freedom to make the best go of our 24 hours every day, not ending up the same regardless of how good we do. George Washington again, and let us with caution indulge the supposition that morality can be maintained without religion. That's a delusion in itself. Let us with caution indulge in the supposition that morality can be maintained without religion. Reason and experience both forbid us to expect that national morality can prevail in exclusion of religious principle. We've tried that. We've been trying that for about the past, I think they took the Bible out of schools in the early 60s. So I'm going to guess we're 60 or 70 years in. How's that been working out? I did a study one time, and I don't have the statistics, but basically every crime has skyrocketed. Doubled, tripled, quadrupled, and even more. We've even added more things that were immoral and illegal, and we've made them legal. One of the states in the Northwest just legalized hard drugs, not just what we call the recreational, the hard stuff. Well, in this past election, the hard stuff. Not that the easy stuff makes it better by any means, but this is the way we're trending without a religious beacon of light. Without morals, a republic cannot subsist any length of time. They, therefore, who are decrying the Christian religion are undermining the solid foundation of morals, the best security for the duration of free governments. With the rise of technology and social media and interconnectedness and finding people who believe the same radical thing that somebody else might believe, these groups are forming at rapid pace. And I believe that it's like putting a teenager in a Lamborghini. We don't know how to handle it. We don't have proper laws in place. And even if we do, proper oversight's not seen. And we've got people getting together doing all kinds of crazy things. And honestly, it's scary to think about forget the next 10 years. How about the next 10 weeks? How about the next 10 months? We're moving that fast now. See, movements that used to take years and decades happen in weeks and months now. The great pillars of all government and of social life are virtue, morality, and religion. This is the armor. This alone renders us invincible. Happens if we take off the armor that's been provided us by God. Happens if we choose to push him to the side, to scoot him to the side and out of the way. I think we're living what happens. Wait till we're done with class, but check your Facebook if you're still on there. Check some of these other things. It's ridiculous, some of the stuff that's going on. Alex de Tocqueville, he came over here just to kind of check things out. He didn't immigrate over here, but he wrote one of the greatest collections of his perceptions of what America was when he traveled around America in the early 1800s. He said, the Americans combine the notions of Christianity and liberty so intimately that in their minds, that it is impossible to make them conceive one without the other. Because we understand where the one is a free flow from the other one. The religious atmosphere of the country was the first thing that struck me upon my arrival in the U.S. In France, I had seen the spirits of religion and freedom almost always marching in opposite directions. In America, I found them intimately linked together and joined and reigned over the same land. Religion should therefore be considered as their first principle of their political institutions. From the start, politics and religion have agreed and have not ceased to do so since. Sadly, that was 200 years ago. We've separated the two and thrown the one in a garbage can, it seems like. And because of that, we're seeing what we see now. To preserve government, we must also preserve morals. Morality rests on religion. If you destroy the foundation of the superstructure, it will fall. When the public mind becomes vitiated and corrupt, laws are nullified and constitutions are waste paper. How many of you heard that the Constitution is a living document? Because it lives and goes from culture to culture, guess what? The culture is different than it was 200 years ago, so we need to rewrite it. We're a civilized people. We don't have wars anymore, so we don't need the Second Amendment. We're a scientific people now. We're a very learned and studied, enlightened people, so we don't need to be governed by myths and superstitions of a Bible, of a Quran, of whatever other religious text. We don't need to be governed by that because we have our enlightened selves. You see where this is kind of all leading and where this is all kind of going? In the Truth Project, and I know most people saw this. I'm not going to draw it. I'm going to save time. I'd rather talk about it than draw it. You picture a bucket that has 6 golf balls in it. We'll say golf balls. Each one of them labeled. You have family, church, God, community, state, and work. And then that bucket itself is God. Everything is contained by God. Everything that encompasses looks to God. What we do and aspire in our work should be glorious to God. How our nationality is governed should be to God. How we relate to others in our community should relate Christianity and should reflect God. Same thing with the family and the church and our own personal relationship to God. You see, what has happened, though, is the state has risen up and decided, we're going to be the bucket now. And we don't need God anymore. So, how you relate in your work life should relate back to the state and your allegiance to the state. How your community life should reflect back to the state. And a lot of times we do this, if nothing else, through our tax dollars. God and man, if you want religion, that's fine, but God is not the center anymore. State is. Can you imagine that when God was telling Samuel, tell the people what the king is going to do. Tell them if they want a king and they no longer want, the God of creation, the God of Abraham, tell them that the king is likely to tax them up as far as, 10%. How much does our government tax us? Not saying that some of it doesn't go to proper things, but I particularly don't want to fund gender studies in the third world. I don't think some other people do either. But when the state is God, think about some of the things that translates over into. The state tells you what you're going to learn at school. Some of them force you only into one school. Luckily, we're not there yet. Labor. Sorry, you're doing too well and this guy's not. We're going to take some of what you have and put it over here. Community. Some communities are in need of help. Church and ethics. Let's just forget church and that we're going to create our own morals and ethics. And what is family? Sometimes it's referred to as the alternative lifestyle. I think that's a term that's even out of style now. I think it's just, this is what we do and call family. This is our family. And I don't mean husband and wife and children. But you think about how some of these things have worked out. I got a lot of books I was going to read some quotes out of, but I'm running kind of close on time. But I'm going to get a couple here. I'm going to leave the last one out. You can come see me if you're interested. But I want to read this, and it tells us where this came from. You ask Brian about Immanuel Kant sometime. He's probably fuming just hearing those words right now. But most modern ethics begins from the Enlightenment presupposition. That means the idea is just counted. You don't have to defend it. It's just there. From the Enlightenment idea of the isolated, heroic self. Allegedly, a rational individual who stands alone and chooses and decides for himself. Nobody's going to tell me what to do. The goal of this is to detach the individual from his or her tradition, parents, stories, community, and history, thereby allowing him to stand alone, to decide to choose and act alone. This is of greater value, guess to who? Not to the society. Because the corporation needs workers who are suitably detached to go where they're pointed toward to go. Suitably detached from their communities, they can go at a beck and call. Growing up because mature functioning adults, defined as becoming someone who has no communal, traditional, familial impediments. You don't have to worry about family. You don't have to worry about your community. You don't have to worry about the church. You just go. You do whatever comes to your mind. This hero, this radical individual, this subjective ethic was best articulated by Immanuel Kant and survives today in the perverted form of the so-called contextual or, and I know you've heard this before, situational ethics. What's right for me might not be right for you, and what's right for you may not be right for me, but guess what? It's okay for us, and it's all right. Neither one of us is right. It's right for you. It's not right for me. As well as in the conventional ethics, this is the wisdom of the average person in society. And this is the writer saying this. I hope that people are... I hope to give people a little more credit than that. So what I do is my own business. First, be sure in your heart that you are right, and then go ahead. Trust your heart. Trust your feelings. I did it because it seemed right. What right have you to judge me? You see, what we have failed to see is that even in this ethic, as it was first stated by Immanuel Kant, based on the myth of the isolated individual, I think it's probably best stated as no man is an island. I'm not even sure I can say man now. No person is an island. But no man is an island. Rational individuality arises, guess what? Out of a story. You came from someplace. You got a story to tell, whoever you are. And this is how it works. This is backed up by, guess what? Not just a childhood growing up, but a community. Individualistic context ethic is depended on by community. It exists in devaluing community and tradition. We become free by attaching ourselves, by our society unwinding us or unprogramming that within us, so that each may discover his own ethics and live within and for state. Now you may think, well, this is just a radical idea off of one of your many books in the shelves back there. But I brought something else out that Preacher Brian has been talking about, and I know that Mr. Gary Hornsby has talked some about. It's a little document, just a few pages. It's one of the most evil things you'll ever lay your hands on and read, called the Humanist Manifesto, Part 2. Because the first one wasn't good enough, they had to come back in and redo it. And I just want you to see that some of the things in our news and in our society aren't just randomly happening, aren't just randomly coming down the pike. This thing was put together, Part 2, in 1973. And I just want to read you just the major bullet points of some of these things as we close out, and hopefully as we close, somebody will pray, "Dear Lord, save us from our own selves." The first premise, under the heading of religion: we believe that traditional dogmatic authoritarian religions that place revelation, God, ritual, or creed above human needs and experience do a disservice to the human species. Not just let them be as long as they're over there. It is a disservice. We are a black mark on humanity because we believe in God. Second premise, promises of immortal salvation or fear of the eternal alternative, hell and damnation, are both illusions, and they're harmful illusions. Not just believe what you want to believe. These are harmful. You are harmful to society if you believe these things. We move to ethics now. And I'm not going to read all of them, but some of these are some really make you shake your head and go, wow. We affirm that morals and values derive their source from human experience. Ethics are autonomous, and here's that word again, situational, needing no theological or ideological sanction unless it breaks the law, and then the state will sanction it. Sixth, we move on to the individual. Individuals should be permitted to express their proclivities and pursue their lifestyles as they desire. You think you're the wrong gender? There's legal protection for that. You want to live the alternative lifestyle, whatever that may mean, there's protection for that. The democratic society as a whole includes the recognition of an individual's right to die with dignity, euthanasia, and the right to outright suicide. Eighth, decision-making must be decentralized. You seen what's going on in the news today? You seen the riots? They're trying to decentralize. Ninth, or one of the other presuppositions of the democratic society, the separation of church and state and the separation of ideology and state are imperatives. Whatever we're going to legally allow to be the church, it must stay over there. We can't allow it in our politics. We can't allow it in our daily lives. We can't allow it out of the church house or your own private house. Human societies should evaluate economic systems not by rhetoric or ideology, but whether or not they increase economic well-being for all individuals and groups. Minimize poverty and hardship by any means necessary. 11th, the principle of moral equality must be furthered through the elimination of all discrimination, including a guaranteed minimum annual income. These are some things that we've heard throughout the recent times. This was in 73. This is the playbook for what we see going on right now. It's just numbers have tipped in the minds of those who are voting, how they're voting. The world community. We need to move towards the building of a world community. That's code for a one world government. We look to the development of a system of world law. The world community must engage in cooperative planning, including excessive population growth must be checked. How do you think they're going to do that? By international standards. 15. The problem of economic growth and development can no longer be resolved by one nation alone. Extreme disproportions of wealth, income, and economic growth should be reduced on a worldwide basis. This is why I believe we have this last breakdown of stimulus that we've had, where most of it goes somewhere else. This is the playbook. America, God, and country Question mark. I believe that we are absolutely a country of the Bible still, but it's only because of us right here and groups just like us right here, trying to hold those who want to push something else in check. We are right at 7:30. Have any comments, questions, or concerns? I'm sorry. I don't even think I did the blanks. I think I just did my own thing. Sorry, Brian. I think I just did my own thing. This country was founded on God. That is the God of the Bible. So we can guard ourselves against the rise of the state. And this last one actually ties into a good way to sum up our class. You know, we need to remember these things. Remember what our country was founded on. It was founded on Christian principles. Where we have gone wrong, we absolutely need to repent as a nation, maybe as individual voters, as constituencies, as those who may or may not work with special interest groups. And we need to return. We need to return to what was first established if we're going to continue or get back to being prosperous. Any thoughts, questions, concerns? Absolutely. And all the stars that were supposed to leave when we had our president come in 4 years ago, they're still here. Do I have anything else? Keith, would you close us out?